Hi. Hello there, YouTube. How are we all doing today? I have my normal guests with me. I have crumplpoint and I have Mr. Aaron Telford with me today. And we have an amazing person that's decided to come back and be fucking helpful and happy. And I'm so happy he's back. Is Mr. Ogre.
Excuse the long break. I had to take some time off today. I could be working, but to be perfectly honest, in the last couple weeks I've caught up enough. And though I missed you, it was nice to have a break. I hope that I can be useful now that I'm back, common sense, and I won't be a bummer. I missed every one of you.
Yeah, missed you on most of our streams, mate. I did miss you. We filled in some good points. Speaking of points, Mr. Crumplepoint has been filling in very fucking well, I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think you've been filling in very, very well on the political side of things for some good insight, good knowledge. I think he's been doing quite well. And we obviously have Mr. Aaron Telford as well. So,
hello, everyone. Nice to be here.
I think we're all doing pretty well. Got a good little mixture. The voice of one tried to message me about 2-3 minutes ago to ask to come on after I asked him about 2 hours ago. As you can see, voice, sorry, mate, but the panel's a bit full.
Damn it. Well, miss voice. Good to see you, voice of one.
But yeah. Does anybody have anything to really talk about, or should we move on to a story? It's up to everybody. I'm not fussed. I've got alcohol.
I'm ready to rock and roll into this shark story, to be honest. Yeah, it sounds interesting.
Yeah, interesting story.
Oh, that quickly. I'm ready whenever you boys are. Whenever you want, boss.
We like to shit our we like to bust our load as quickly as possible.
All right, then. This is stories I do believe coming from Common Sense Guy, as usual. Thank you, Common Sense Guy, for your diligent hard work. This one is out of BBC News, straight from merry old England. Fisherman bitten by poor beagle. Somebody say that for me. poor beagle shark off Cornwall coast. And then you see this very stalwart, stout-looking gentleman here. Max Berryman, and that's this gentleman. So let's find out a little bit more about Mr. Berryman. A fisherman is in hospital after being bitten several times by a shark about 120 miles, 197 kilometers off Land's End. The poor beagle shark, that's killing me. I'm thinking it's poor beagle, so I'm going to go with that, as you said, and not stumble over it if I can help it. The poor beagle shark had been hauled up in the nets of the Grove Neck of Lard Ram fishing boat early on Sunday. The shark, thought to be up to 8 feet, 2.4 meters long, bit the leg of fisherman Max Berryman as the crew tried to get it back into the water. He was treated at the scene and winched by the Coast Guard to Two Rose Royal Cornwall Hospital. So winched. What I'm not sure. Some of these this whole thing has got me in a tizzy with the words I don't know. But I'm assuming winched. Does that mean that he was taken off by helicopter? Like they took him off? Okay,
yeah, exactly correct.
All right.
If his medical needs are urgent, I'll get a helicopter out, winch him up, and fly him away.
Yes. So Alex Grieg from Falmouth Coast Guard said the shark bites went down to the muscle. There were about 4 or 5 cuts altogether. One of which was extending about 10 inches, 25 centimeters in length along the side of his knee, he said. I imagine that's the boat. Phil Mitchell, the boat skipper, said, quote, his leg was, it's like not Paul Mitchell, but Phil Mitchell. Quote, his leg was badly gashed.
To do with EastEnders, that's absolutely funny as fuck. Mr. Phil Mitchell.
Oh, don't bring Bell Enders into this.
So he was badly gashed. He just had to do the best job he could dressing it. We got him stable. Spoke to the doctor who recommended him being airlifted because of any bacteria that could have been on the teeth. Mr. Mitchell said he thought the shark weighed up to about 20 stone, 127 or about 265, 270 pounds.
That's a big fucking shark.
That's a big fucking shark, if you ask me. He described the poor beagle as a really big and powerful, just as really big and powerful, and said it was fortunate the shark had caught Mr. Berryman with its top jaw, but did not clamp its bottom jaw closed. We don't have any really good juicy pictures, boys. So I don't know. I mean, I appreciate this story, but all I can say is if you're a Bering Sea fisherman fishing for snow crab and opilio crab, you know, and king crab, and you fall overboard and drowned, don't expect me to cry for you. So this gentleman just got basically, it's like a journeyman carpenter that accidentally mashes his thumb with his hammer. It will happen from time to time.
Yeah, kind of, but it's
Not in
the case-
Cornwall, though.
I was going to say, for us, this is not a common occurrence. That's the reason why it's newsworthy.
Okay.
We don't have sharks in our water. Well, we do.
The
But they're
basking
normally
shark.
really, really small.
Yeah, the basking shark is the second largest shark fish in the sea. And
Yeah.
that's a common sight around the British Isles. The difference is that the basking shark is a vegetarian as opposed to this little monster.
Well, I thought that it's cold water around you. Isn't the water cold?
That's exactly
Yeah.
where I was. That's where I was going. It's the case
Yeah.
that proper predators that are supposed to be eating us. And just so you know, Mr. Telford, the basking shark's not vegetarian. He eats krill. It's not vegetarian.
They're strainers. Are they strain eaters?
Yes.
Well, I take it back, but I just assumed because the water was cold that you would have great whites there.
Well, actually, that's a good point, Legs. I remember a couple of years ago watching some documentary about great white sharks, and they are warm-blooded sharks. And at the time, they were suspicious that some shark scientists were saying that because of the anatomy of the great white, he was surprised there were no great whites around the British Isles. And segue to another part of the thing, great whites have apparently been randomly spotted around the coast of Spain, and it was only a small skip from there to like the English Channel or something.
Yeah, with different water, as Ogre was quite rightly admitted and said, it's a case of the waters are completely different. The waters are warmer in Spain. I'm not sure of the actual degrees for how cold the water has to be, but if the water is a particular coolness, the sharks, great white sharks especially, actually fall asleep and hibernate. They can't move because of how cold it is. They turn their nervous system off.
It's also how changeable British waters are. The Mediterranean, even when it's at its lower temperatures, it's not as big a fluctuation as British waters.
Yeah.
Well, they're as popular as pie off the coast of South Africa, and correct me if I'm wrong, isn't South African waters of a similar type to British waters?
Very cold. They're cold, though. I mean,
South
great
African
white
waters
shark.
are not cold.
Okay. The great white sharks are going to be found where the water is cold.
The reason why I say that is because if you actually, with particular South African points in the seasons, the water currents shift, and there's a particular water current that comes off of the coast of South Africa that's around about 3 to 4 to 5 miles off of the coast that stays completely and utterly warm. And in that period, that's when the great white sharks are around South Africa. In that point, the water cuts off. So if later on in the season, when they're chasing after the seals and some of the penguins and things like that, they can get caught and die out there because the water changes. But it's only because the currents change, the heat in the current changes.
Huh. Well, I don't. I mean, obviously, I thought there was biting sharks around England, so I'm not one to argue about this kind of thing. I don't know much about it. It's just amazing.
Dolphins.
Yeah, and dolphins are dangerous too, folks. I don't know if y'all realize that they actually started putting signs up around Daytona Beach telling people not to encourage dolphins if they see them by putting bait out if they're fishing, by feeding them, because they will they actually try to hump people from time to time.
Mr.
Dolphins converting to Islam now?
No, that's a good point, but no, I don't know. They are very intelligent, so I doubt it. Oh, sorry. That was really derailing it. So in other words, I can't really argue about it much because I don't know. I don't even know where they dwell. Did you all know that there was a man in St. Louis wading in the Mississippi River that was bit by a bull shark? And they do find bull sharks that far up the Mississippi River. But this is that's why to me, when I hear about a shark biting somebody in the ocean, I'm trying to get, see where it's a big deal.
That's exactly why I picked the story, because for us it is a big deal. It's a case that this doesn't generally happen too much.
Yeah, it's not the sort of thing you would take precautions for here because it's unheard of.
Yeah.
Whales are more common out here, like going upriver, than sharks.
Yes. Sperm whales particularly, actually, to be fair.
See, this is still huge, 120 miles out into the ocean. All right. Well, and there you go. Like you said, I mean, people don't want to accept the fact, but in the Bahamas, for the most part, there's a lot of sharks, but you're in no danger. I mean, black tips, reef sharks, nurse sharks, lemon sharks, even the dreaded hammerhead shark. They're really not that dangerous. I mean, it's not a tiger shark or a bull shark or a great white. Probably the most dangerous of those, I think the one that bites the most people is the bull shark. Bull sharks are motherfuckers.
Yeah, they are a bit cuntish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
the thing I worry about is that the hysteria that this always involves, because the fucking Australians are constantly going on shark calls for no particular reason. Like, some surfer will go into their hunting waters. Like, because sharks, I'm quite interested in sharks, and I've given to shark finning charities before, who make sure the bloody Chinese don't go over into other people's water and fin the sharks. And they are incredible animals, and they won't attack humans, generally speaking. So what happens with Australians is the surfers go into the hunting grounds, specific hunting grounds of the shark, and then they get chewed half to death or to death. And the Australians decide to go on a big shark call, even though, like, this would be miles and miles from anywhere civilians would be. And it's a bit like, to me, somebody walking onto a Ministry of Defence shooting range, and then ignoring all the signs and getting shot, and then blaming the MOD. It's like, well, no, you took the risk. The signs were there.
Good idea to get some.
Are we going to ban the army? No. So why are we culling sharks? So I hope nothing like that happens here. And you got to wonder why they came up this far, or if it's a fluke.
That's definitely a good idea for earning some money nowadays, Mr. Point.
Yeah. Yes, and I tell you what, the hysteria is what bothers me too. I mean, good gracious, look what happened when Jaws came out. And here's the fact: we could all take a page and a lesson from the Aussies. I mean, I've seen boys. In fact, when I was young in Florida, I would swim where there were alligators present. And you could see them. They're not crocodiles, though, so I shouldn't even have mentioned that. It makes me feel like a pussy now. But I mean, I've seen these boys down under. They're swimming. There's crocodiles in the area. You live life as it comes at you. Maybe there's a great white. Maybe there's a crocodile. Maybe you get bit by what's that one bad? The Australian brown snake, whatever that is, and die in 3 minutes. But what do you got to do? Like you said, you can't blame the Ministry of Defense in this case. You just live life, take it as it comes at you, and a little bit of excitement is better than nothing. In fact, I envy this fisherman. He was living a boring life yesterday, and now he's suddenly the belle of the ball. He's getting his 15 minutes.
He's getting his 15 minutes.
Yeah,
he's definitely getting his 15 minutes. I'm not sure that I would swap places with him to get his 15 minutes, because he's more than happy to have that fucking massive wound on his leg. Whatever that's going to entail later on.
I might swap places with him. He is a Brit, after all. That would be kind of cool to be a Brit.
Well, he's earned himself a few free drinks at the bar.
Brother, he will never buy his first 3 pints at the bar ever again.
Probably not.
The first 3. No.
I hope he is all right, because that must have been bloody terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing out of all of this is the fact that there wasn't a Sharknado out of it.
See, the thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say it would be terrifying for anyone. I mean, there you are, minding your own business, doing your job day in, day out, and then boom, some inconsiderate shark comes in, bites your leg off.
No. Hang on just a second. It wasn't a case of that. It was a case of when they pulled the fish traps up, it got onto the boat, and as they were trying to get the shark off of the boat again, that's when they bit. Well, actually, he didn't actually bite. It got caught. Because as it says in the story, he didn't clump down his bottom jaw. It was just his top jaw that got
just
caught.
his top jaw. And now, you know what gets me about that comment is that it says that it bit him like 4 or 5 times, but yet it was only his top. He must have been
trying to
lunging, yes, lunging and moving around. Maybe the teeth was against him when the shark was flailing. Yep. But as you said, he was in the net, removed from the net, and they're trying to place the shark back in the water. I say there's a good lesson to be learned here, gentlemen.
Kill the shark.
Yeah, thank you. You gaff the fuck out of the shark as soon as you see it. You gaff that sumbitch to death and then throw him in for bait. You know, cut him into pieces or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if I'd be the one taking that risk, because if you go for a shark, you want to fucking get it first time, or you know, God help you.
I've been out fishing in the ocean on the coast of Florida a few times. We pulled up some sharks. You gaff them in the head, a good time there. Crumple point, they're done.
Just like any other.
They don't call you the ogre for nothing. Jesus Christ.
Well, I mean, you know, they have a couple different kinds of gaffs on a charter boat. Usually, you know, like a decent size 30-foot or whatever. Just a boat that goes 20 miles off the coast and trolls for tuna or whatever you're trying to catch. And what the gaff that I'm talking about would be straight with it's almost like a harpoon, about a 6-foot handle with about a 18-inch, maybe 2-foot piece of steel on the end that comes to a point that's barbed on both sides. I mean, you go get up close to him and bam, it's over. But you are right about one thing. The biggest mistake somebody could make would be pussyfooting around about it. You don't want to go up all, oh, what should I do? No, you need to go with a purpose and get it done. The other hooks too. I mean, if you hook them with a hook gaff, which is the same thing, but it's got one tip coming out usually with a small barbed point on it, but then it hooks around with a big barbed point on the hook. I mean, you gaff them in the gills, man. I mean, imagine if your lungs were on the outside of your body and somebody put a hook in that lung.
Well, see, that's why I was thinking of the hook gaff. If you miss with that fucker, you're hooked in and you've missed. That's
oh yeah, you're fucked.
I was thinking about. You know, you're totally. But I forgot that they do the straight ones.
Let it go though. If you hook on a big fish and you think you're always ready to let it go.
Yeah, it's all whaling ships around here, so I'd completely forgotten you got the straight ones.
Oh man, that kills me. Has anybody ever pined for those days and thought that maybe it would be good to be on a fucking whaler somewhere in the South Seas, risking your life in a damn pine boat, you know, going for the Nantucket sleigh ride?
Nope.
On the one Assassin's Creed game, the pirate version, there's various side missions where you can go whale hunting.
Yeah, Black Flag.
But whale hunting like today with the big old steel boats, like the Japanese fleet and fucking air harpoons, or go whale hunting in a little boat with it.
Oh, I was in a little boat, and I couldn't bring myself to do it. I could take on a whole fleet of the fucking British Navy, but I could not bring myself to fucking kill a whale.
No.
Hey, that's a quote. That is a paraphrase from Moby Dick, because Ishmael says, "Many a man who strode up bravely to a battery would recoil at the sight of the whale fanning into eddies the air above their head." And I mean, in other words, he's saying once you're there with a whale, there's a lot of people that have, I mean, I hope everybody understood what I just said, that have led men in a charge against a very fearsome foe on the battlefield that would never handle being in a small boat against a fucking Leviathan. That's what I meant to by pining for it. I think about those people. They were overlooked too. Pirates loved to take whale boats because of their very valuable cargo, and they weren't really that kind of fighting men as a rule. But no braver man ever was than the fucking men that manned the deathful whale boats.
Yeah, I remember you reading that part actually on your channel.
My favorite book, probably. Oh yeah, man. So you know what I was thinking? What's more fearsome? God, this is okay.
What's more? Not a great segue. That is not
okay.
We are not,
go ahead.
We are not doing that as a segue. It's not
crack on. Hey, at least you caught it. At least you caught me before I went.
Yeah.
Full out.
No, but you did make a good point, especially. Well, actually, both of you made a good point. And the fact that Me as an animal lover, I would much rather go off and fight against any sort of form of humans or any sort of form like that than fight against a fucking animal just to kill it for using it for resources. I know
It's quite
that
a modern sensibility, though, isn't it? You know, like
it is. It
and
is.
it's also quite. I don't know if it's a hypocritical one or not. I can never make my mind up.
I think it is. If we're looking at it from an actual evolutionary point, it's definitely a hypocritical point.
Yeah,
If
like
we're
I don't
looking at,
think I would kill a human either, though. I just think that
oh, I would.
I don't
I would
think I
much
could
rather
bring
kill a
myself
human
at
than I would an
all under
animal.
any circumstances to kill a whale. Maybe a shark because they're predators, and I guess that's a bit different. But oh fuck.
See, I think it's a case for me. I'd much rather kill a human than I would an animal, and I could quite easily kill a human, but I couldn't kill an animal easily, not unless it was attacking me. Simply to the point of, I've always told my mates, if there was a person crossing the road and an animal crossing the road, I would purposely aim for the human instead of the animal.
All right. Oh,
And
I'm
that's
sorry.
my honest to God truth on that.
Yeah, I don't know, like if
What about
if it's
going
that extreme,
fishing for
but
food? Well, if you like take ordinary fishing, I never got into fishing, but I could do it if I need some food to eat.
Yeah, I could do it for food, but I never understand the fact of catching a fish and then throwing it back. I don't
Yeah, that's
understand
my
how
point.
that's a sport.
Yeah. What's the
I
point in
don't
fishing?
get it either. Common sense. If you went and said that, look, there's two big prevailing thoughts here in Michigan, the sportsman's paradise. Okay, that's what they call this, the Great Lakes State, but we call it the sportsman's paradise. The one school of thought is, oh well, if you know you got to put it back because the fish, you go fish it out. The other school of thought is, I'm here to fish. I want to eat what I catch, and I'm not going to take more than is good for the environment. Look, I don't see the point. If I'm going fishing, I'm fucking eating the fish that I catch. If it's good fish, I'm eating it.
well, it just feels like sadism otherwise, doesn't it? Really?
Exactly.
It's crazy. Yes, sadism. Yes.
Exactly. Absolutely correct on that. Oh, speaking of sadism, let's talk about the idea of maybe black nationalism in the idea of Wakanda.
Do you know the way?
That's
Oh,
Nigeria.
mercy sake, mercy sake. Oh, so this story is coming out of CNN. Once again, thank you, Common Sense, for your diligent work on these wonderful stories. This is by AJ Willingham from CNN. Apparently, Chadwick Boseman, whatever it is, gives Wakanda Forever salute at Howard graduation. For anyone that's been living under a rock for the last 100 years, Howard is a mostly black, if not used to be all black university. A very, very popular all-black university. Fact, little known fact, Rachel Dolezal went to Howard. CNN, Chadwick Boseman, the man behind the Black Panther mask, gave a stirring graduation speech at Howard University this weekend, ending his words of wisdom with the iconic Wakanda Forever salute. Howard forever, the actor said, crossing his fist before a cheering crowd at his alma mater. Boseman, 40, graduated.
Anytime that it comes up with either Howard Forever or Wakanda Forever, change those words for black nationalism.
Oh, yeah, I know it, man. I mean, I've got some things too, Common Sense. This is, I've got some ideas myself. This is making me a little ill because of, you think about reverse roles. But here we go. His alma mater, but Boseman, this dude, 40, graduated in 2000 from the historically black university in Washington, D.C. During his speech Saturday, he urged students to pursue life with passion and to fight for justice and equality. This year, students at the university protested a financial aid scandal and campaigned for more affordable tuition and campus housing. Boseman told students that he too fought what he thought were problems at the university when he attended. He called Howard a magical place where the dynamics of positive and negative seem to exist in extremes. Quote, you love the university enough to struggle with it, end quote. He said, quote, oh, this is a bunch of quotes, just bear with me. Quote, now you have to continue to do that. You have to continue to struggle with it, he's saying. Everything that you fought for was not for yourself. It was for those who come after. The actor told the crowd about his early days acting on soap operas, saying He was fired from one unnamed production after he questioned what he felt its stereotypical portrayal of black characters. So such struggles, he told graduates, are not obstacles, but rather keys to meaningful success. Quote, the struggles along the way are only meant to shape you for your purpose, said the actor whose movie Black Panther earned more than $1.3 billion worldwide. Quote,
I love the way it's his fucking movie. It's
yeah,
his
I know it, right?
Nobody else fucking worked on it at all, did they?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you don't really hear him say that about Tom Cruise and nobody either. But here's his final quote, and we'll tear this apart if we may. Quote, press on with pride and press on with purpose. Wakanda forever. I threw that in. So there you go, boys. Have at it.
Forever. Supremacy.
Can I just say before we get into the rights and wrongs and ins and outs of it that the Wakanda Forever salute and chant is an absolute Krakatoa of cringe, and I can't. It causes me physical cringing symptoms every time I see it.
Yes, you may say that.
Am I the only one who has not seen Black Panther?
No, I haven't.
I have not seen one fucking second of it. Not one second. In fact, I'll be perfectly honest, except for what people have shown where I'm watching, folks make commentary on it, I've not seen even a trailer of the movie. I refuse to. I wouldn't watch, I've never watched Birth of a Nation either, folks. Never watched it.
Yeah, there's no need to watch fucking stereotypical fucking propaganda.
If I may, the Black Panther thing is a really big bag of snakes, because having seen a review of it by a guy who went into the politics of it, it seems that the Black Panther character is more a nationalist, and it's the bad guy that's the black supremacist.
How about that Freudian slip, man? The Black Panther's a really big bag of snakes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can see this article perhaps taking what he said and making a big fuss out of it, out of nothing, just like the film propaganda machine did, and then the film came out and the story was very tame. It might be the same case here, I don't know.
See, I don't think the story is very tame, because I read the story for it and what's supposed to be the screenshot show and everything else of that, or the screen piece written. And as you quite rightly put down, the bad guy is a black supremacist thinking that they should take over the rest of the world, where the good guy is a black nationalist thinking that he should make and create a complete and utter dictatorship for black people and just black people, just so that they can have their own area. What's good about either of those situations if the roles were reversed and it was a white man doing it?
In
their eyes.
That's what I want to talk about. That's what I want to talk about, common sense.
What would it be? That's the whole reason why I picked this story, because the whole idea in itself, in using an idea where it was a completely black movie, completely black this, and completely black that, and then using that as a signal and a fucking what some people would call a.
So in other words, if I went up and I was like, "Hey, everybody should watch this new documentary about how Hitler was really a great man and how God was guiding him in World War I and saved him from a bomb one time," and I ended it by saying "Sig Heil," you mean there might be a problem with that?
There's a possibility, yeah. Only in certain areas, though.
Okay. Well, and so we could even compound that problem if, say, I was giving that speech at the University of Michigan, not 120 miles from where I sit now. So if I was giving that speech and saying, "Hey, you young people, there really wasn't much wrong with the Nazi movement. In fact, we could say any movement. How about Muslims, whatever?" And then I ended it by, the old Siggy.
No,
that'd be a.
Well, that's exactly what this is. This is the reason why I picked this story, because the symbolism behind this, and the fact that he went to Howard, and the fact that it's done at a particular place at a particular time.
So, do they get it? Is this them putting this in our face? Common sense? Do they actually understand, or do they think that they are right? That's my big question about this.
I think it's both. I think it's a case that they are pushing this agenda. They are pushing this ideology of thinking that black nationalism is a good idea. Any sort of form of nationalism in that sense is bad. To the point that we're only allowed to have these people in, we're only allowed to have those and whatever. That's a bad thing.
if that's the case, again, forgive me for being a bit naive here. Two black nationalist organizations I've heard about in America are on one hand Nation of Islam, on the other hand the Black Panthers, and they've been going around for decades. And I think they're the two largest, most powerful such groups in America that I've heard about. Why are they not monopolizing on this narrative, or if they have, why are we not hearing about it more?
They are monopolizing on it. I'll tell you for why they're monopolizing on it. Their numbers are actually growing day by day, both sects. They are both
And why aren't
growing
we
day
hearing
by day.
about it? Or why? How
Because they
come I've
don't
not
want you
heard
to
about it?
panic.
Okay.
Well, put it this way: when all the Black Panthers and other black nationalists were going around and actually causing proper problems, like mini terrorists, because they were going to be classified as terrorists at one point,
So
back
it's
in the 70s or 80s, they were going to be classified as terrorists.
so it's okay
Sorry,
if Black Panthers do it, but not okay if their white counterparts don't do it.
that's the question that we're going through.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm up to speed now. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right, no problem. But for me, they are growing in numbers. But it's this story, this symbolism that is a case of being pushed forward. It's the narrative that is now getting what some people that go against the alt-righters, so to speak, which is fine, they can do. But they go, okay, well, this is a dog whistle. Well, if you look at the definition and then look at what this gentleman did, you can't really say it's not a fucking dog whistle.
This was a dog whistle for black supremacy. Yeah, I can't. I mean, I shouldn't laugh, common sense, but how could they deny what you just said? Because this is the same logic. This is the problem with identitarian politics. This is the problem with morality politics. This is the problem with all of this stuff. Is when it comes down to it, if the scope is turned back in the other direction, it's always this way. I mean, my God. And I'm looking, I was almost positive that the Black Panthers were labeled a terrorist, but it's organization, but it's not the easiest thing to find. I was trying to find today, Mrs. Ogre and I were looking about 2 years ago, and they have these coloring books for Muslim children in the Middle East, and it depicts Jews with long fingers. They look like almost like a mixture between Dracula and the troll Jew, you know, with the big nose, you know what I mean, the dark hair, and they eat babies, right? There's parts of the coloring book where it shows these evil Jews pushing babies into the oven, and then in another part they're eating them. It's made for children that are preschool, you know. And I couldn't find it today though, because little by little they are making it so I can't look up and find out if the Black Panthers were once labeled as terrorist groups. I can't go find these coloring books for children and show that, look, this is actually what they teach. They're starting to memory hole that shit, boys and girls.
Ministry of Truth style.
Yes, exactly so. I was trying to look for criminal stats on the FBI for rape and for other different bits and pieces because of a video that I did on the guy that was pushing for the fucking false narrative that the girls that got shot by police got shot for no reason, and the fucking 1 in 5 fucking rape statistic, which is fucking retarded. But I was speaking to somebody in the comment section below, and they were trying to say to me, "Oh, this doesn't happen. This doesn't happen." I tried to look for statistics for this year and last year in 2016. Could not find a chart that broke anything down into racial groups at all. And I went on to directly the FBI website as well, and it just did not happen.
No, you're not allowed to see that information, common sense, because you may draw logical conclusions from that.
Yeah.
Is Kanye West still getting grief for all his comments he made?
Oh, God. I didn't know we were going to talk about that, but are you kidding? The poor guy. I never thought, look, they're turning on Kanye West, and he's the one that looked right in the camera with what the hell's his name next to him there? I married an axe murderer and talked about George Bush does not like black people. Mike Myers like, I mean, off script. So now all this, oh, man. Yes, of course. And they will eat whoever they need to eat. That's the whole point here. That's why Common Sense made such a good point. How can you use this measurement? You're breaking out a scale And when the balance is on you, you weigh the same as I do. We both are either guilty or innocent. And all of this shit, man, it needs to go away.
Well, if we are going to talk about the idea of Kanye West and what he said and everything, it wasn't a planned segue for anything, but as we are going to talk about it, when he was talking about the slavery was a choice, he wasn't talking about the whole 400 years. He was trying to insinuate, even though he's not what you would call a wordsmith, was trying to insinuate that the 200 years after slavery stopped, we put ourselves as black people, put ourselves into forced slavery by saying that we're being oppressed and by not listening and not doing what we need to do to get ourselves out of here. Because he was trying to imply if there was such things as racism, then why are people rappers? Why are people presidents? Why are people in police commissioner spots? Why are people normal, average? Why are they earning the same amount as white people? Why are white people poor? The idea that anybody is now being victimized solely because of their race by any form of institution, I'm not going to say that racism is dead completely. I'm fucking not. There are people out there that are still racist. I'm sorry. Can't do nothing about that. What we can do is, what we have done, the institutions are now not racist. In fact, you can now go the opposite way and say that the institutions are now so not racist towards black people that they positively discriminate against white people.
Well, academically speaking, Asian Americans in this country are the most discriminated against. They have to get the highest, and I never understood that. They come out and they now I'm not going to remember his name. The bell curve, the guy that wrote the bell curve. They come out and they protest this doctor that wrote a good book with a lot of good information in it, because he's saying that women and men are a little different. Sometimes there's a little difference in the races, and here's the bell curve. The people at the top are these people. Oh, you asshole, you can't say that. You can't do that. But, well, make up your mind. And once again, it just comes down to you can't have it both ways. I mean, why is it that if it doesn't matter, why do Asians have to have a higher score? And I don't think there should be. There should be one score that says this is what you have to, because you're setting people up anyway.
Well,
I mean,
you know the reasons why? It's because Asian people will do so much better, and to make it look better because they actually, completely and utterly outwork everybody. It's not just a case because they're smarter than white people and other people like that. It's because they work their fucking asses off.
Well, they work themselves into suicide, a lot of the younger ones. That's how hard they work. So they've got it kind of backwards the other way, like, if that makes sense. So you've got the one group who's being softened up and given an easy ride of it, and then you've got the other group who's actually working themselves to death.
I've got a question quickly for you on that point, and it's not a case of refuting your point, because I completely and utterly agree with it, and I really do. But do you think that, at least using America as a generalization, as a starting point, as a Kickstarter, so to speak, do you think because the Asian people have to work so goddamn hard, and not all of them get into that bracket, do you think it's the dishonor that comes to them from not getting into what they're doing? Do you think that is attributing to the fact of their own suicides and their own deaths?
Yeah, that's what the thing is it's a cultural thing of you go out and, you probably know this already. You go out, you work, and you pay for your parents in their old age. That's how the Asians do things.
Yes.
And they have that mentality. So if you don't get into university, you're deemed a complete failure. And the other thing is, not only is that a deeply unhealthy and outdated and unnecessary attitude in a country as rich as America and as enterprising compared to China and other places, not only is that an unnecessary belief system, but it's compounded by, as you say, if you add this discrimination against Asian Americans and Asians from the university system, disqualifying them, as well as the pressure put on them by their families. I feel so sorry for young people of that demographic, because they have now pressure from the institutions and from their families. And where do they go for support? Well, there's nowhere. They kill themselves.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, but I do feel sorry for a different demographic. I feel sorry for the demographic of colored people in general as blacks generally. simply because they are told that they are victims and they are victims of this and that. And no matter where they are, doesn't matter if they're in ghettos or in mid-range sort of price ranges or whatever, most of them don't seem to get anywhere because they believe the narrative that they're being told by fucking governments, the schools themselves, the teachers themselves, the kids around them even. Are saying that they're not going to amount to anything. I feel sorry for them, not because they're getting told that, but because they are believing it. And it's a case of it's a place for equal opportunities. Everybody has the same chance. You work hard, you get where you need to go. Nothing to do with color or race, not even where you come from.
Yeah, and the other thing that you reminded me of as you were saying that was that there's a lot of these, these gurus, these lifestyle people who'll give you advice on things. And I was watching one, and he was saying a black fellow, and he was saying he wasn't even thinking about race, and neither was I. It was only like much later in the video that he started, just briefly mentioning it. But he was talking about if you believe you're a victim, that is both a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's also the mark of a large ego because you think that people give a shit enough to go out of their way to oppress you because you're somehow special. Well, you're not, and your ego will tell you are, but you're not, and your ego is a barrier to personal growth. So every time you tell yourself you're a victim, you're holding yourself back, but you're also hindering your personal development as a human being, whether it be he wasn't talking racially. He was just talking about, late for the bus. Oh, that bus driver just drove past me because he hates me, stuff like that. But then he moved on to race later briefly. But so that's the other thing is if you believe these people are right, then all these people are going to be not growing as people because they think that the world's out to get them when it isn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the same as what all of these, what we would call libtards and fucking leftists and basically feminists and whatever, Marxists, all come out and say that everybody's oppressed, here's your oppression level and everything else of that. As you said, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because you can always blame it. And that's the thing. Once you can start going, as you quite rightly use as an example, oh, that bus driver pulled off from me. Yeah, he just hates me because I'm black, or he hates me because I'm disabled, or he hates me because of this reason, because of that reason, whatever reason it is that fits into intersectionality. And those type of things do not help society in any way, shape, or form. Maybe it's the fact that you were 5 minutes late and the bus waited for you but couldn't wait any longer.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's the case that you should have just run a little bit quicker. I don't know. There's so many things that can just affect what's going on. But people like that in that mindset don't ever look at it as it could be their fault. It's a case of it's somebody else's fault. And that's a generational thing that happens now. To the point, as you quite rightly just said, where everybody is now looking for, oh, it's this person's fault, it's this person's fault. I can't buy a house. Whose fault is it? Oh, it's government's fault. It's the Conservatives. Partially, yeah, but maybe it's something to do with Labour, or maybe it's the fact that you're working at a fucking bar and going out every fucking weekend from Friday through to fucking Monday. Maybe that has something to fucking do with it as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. The reason why I don't own my own house is because I've not saved my money for it. Instead, I went off drinking when I probably shouldn't have drank. So, I know
man. Well, but when you die, where's that house going to be? And then your memories. What do you got when you're old? But your memories. I mean, in the end, I would say that, yeah, I get the grasshopper and the ant. I've told the fable on my channel more than twice, so I understand it. And I would like to be the ant. I'd like to have my stores all ready for the winter and whatnot. But who has more fun?
Story, the ant story, the film. Wasn't that whole fable the point of ant story?
I don't know. It was an Aesop's fable where a grasshopper was like fucking off all summer while he watched the ant toil, and then he went to the ant's house in the winter and knocked on the door, and he didn't let him in because he had to take care of himself and his family, and the grasshopper dies a slow, painful death by freezing to death.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happens in ants.
I was just going to say, I was wanting to prompt Mr. Ogre here, perhaps, because I was thinking of this from a more law enforcement point of view, but like Mr. Ogre is very into his whole psychology department. So I was thinking perhaps another reason for this sort of mental health uprising we're seeing is I've found that kind of oh poor me mentality is like it's almost like fertile soil for mental illness. And one of the reasons I say that is because every domestic abuser that I have ever come across always thinks they're always paranoid and think that the whole world has stitched them up in some way. And I was just wondering if that's what Mr. Ogre has come across.
Well, I mean, Narcissus was the most mentally handicapped person in mythology, wasn't he? Anytime that you look into the well so long that you fall in and drowned. And of course, I mean, I've heard some really intriguing things today. One is the little known fact that a low self-esteem is born from pride. That when it's woe is me and oh, why did this happen to me? And then you see the parents that just can't let go. I mean, you know, something horrible has happened. It's happened to other people too. It's just life, but they can't let go of whatever it may be. I could put many different situations in this idea, but this is what rung my bell. Yes, it's a fertile time right now, but remember this: woe is me. Why are you so special? When I was young, that's what would have been asked of me. Why are you going around in pity for yourself? What makes you think you're so special? Oh, you had a girlfriend that you thought liked you so much, and then you found her making out with Johnny, at the homecoming dance. Well, buck up, little faggot. You don't feel so special. Don't tell yourself that you are so important that no one else has had to deal with it. Once we embrace that, because psychologically speaking, Crumple Point and boys, we are this great organic thing, aren't we? We all consume energy. We all expel, we do these, we all are this one organic thing. In the end, we do experience it in our own way and with our own subjective viewpoints, but we have to remember that it's fertile. Don't feel special. You're not unique. It's time that humanity gets back to those basics.
I completely agree. I completely agree with that, Ogre. And I'd just like to add a little bit extra to that as well, just from my little understanding of psychology in itself. The human psyche in itself needs to actually have forms of failure to actually be able to limit oneself and know what one's limitations are. If one doesn't know what one's limitations is, then one will always strive for things that it cannot do, and yet will blame other people in its way to get there. That way they will try to pull the people down around them to pull themselves up. That in itself does not help society. That in itself will never help anybody bar that person. But the problem is with that, it doesn't help the person. Because, as I just said, you're pulling down people to your level, not pushing yourself up to their level. And that's the reasons why we need to actually have first, second, third, fourth, fifth. We need to have those actual points and actual standings in sociology because of our psyche to realize we're not the fastest runner, so we can't fucking do that. We're not the best fucking speller, so we can't do that. So we play to our strength and not try and force ourselves on our weaknesses.
And that's the horrible thing. When we start forcing weaknesses on people, oh my goodness. And yeah, I know you want to probably speaking in Crumple, so I won't go off on another tangent. But let's remember that and all of this culture that is being created, this weakness that is bringing out all these mental, defects. Go ahead, man, because this is hitting so many cylinders for me. That I mean, but what? There's no pill. Go watch a movie called Brain Candy by the Kids in the Hall, folks, and maybe that'll shed some light on.
Yeah, I was going to say as well. Like, I have a couple ideas regarding the story, but don't stop and go back to that if you guys have got more ideas on just this, because this is a good.
Oh no. In fact, we got some other stories. We have some other things coming up, so I don't know what common sense is.
It's only 10 o'clock. We've only got 3 stories left that we can do whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah, so if you guys are on fire with this topic, I'm happy to hear more, and I also want to give way to Aaron as well. But
to be honest, I've never studied psychology. I've never had an interest in it, so I'm just happy to sit back and learn about. Have a basic learning 101 lesson of psychology, so knock yourselves out.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, don't listen to me on psychology. I'm only in first year. If you want to learn from the master, that's all ogre.
No, I wouldn't say that. But remember this. You've been studying psychology your whole life. Psychology, the knowledge of the way a mind works. So whether you know it or not, and when I say mind, remember not the brain. It's the psychology deals with more with the soul. I know they don't like to say that either, but they don't really want to say soul.
It's the cognitive thought, isn't it?
Well, it's beyond that, because the cognitive function, a cognitive thought is where you're using past schemas, past mental patterns, past mental maps to come to another same solution.
Isn't that the idea of the subconscious?
Well, but no, what I'm saying is the soul. I really think when we go back to the root of the word psychology, the knowledge of the psyche, it really does point to the idea that there is something inside of us that's intangible that we want to discover. And that said, Aaron, you've been studying it your whole life. Every time you go to a pretty girl and you try to woo her, you're using psychology. Every time you ask for a raise, every time you try to talk a cop out of giving you a ticket, every time you interact with human beings, you're using psychology.
Quite so. And I'm also not a fan of this mentality of, oh, you've not studied it, so you've nothing to contribute as well.
Yeah, me either. I hate that. Yeah.
But I agree with what Ogre's saying, because I found that I've read a lot of philosophy, read a lot of psychology, and the thing is, I've also read a lot of neurology, and a lot of what people think psychology is actually neurology. And psychology is much more, well, like what Ogre's saying, because philosophy used to deal with all that, but then they decided, well, that's got to be about systems of knowledge. We want to study the human psyche specifically, and then science leapt forward, and neurology was born, and psychology has been left in this strange place where it's still useful, but it's sometimes I'm reading it and it's like, have you decided what you are? But I've noticed that like when I was growing up and listening to my parents talk and listening to their parents talk, this sort of creeping, I don't want to like make huge aspersions about society at large, but just from people I've been speaking to, this creeping of handouts, be it from institutions or the government or whatever, of picking winners, has led to a very jealous mentality. Whereas, people I speak to who are older, or books you read from even older times, it's very much like, oh, I didn't make it, and everybody's like, well, encouraging you to do better, or encouraging you to earn, or encourage you to try harder. Whereas now it's like, oh, I didn't manage that. It's like, well, you should have. That's not fair. We should go and talk to this person and get you, bumped up a grade, or more money.
Isn't that crazy though?
But I think it's insane, and I think it's causing people to be insane, because it's just giving them this, as we've discussed, this warped sense of how important they are in the grand scheme of things. But also, I think it stops them from experiencing consequences properly.
Exactly. That is the whole point.
Listen, my whole life I've been a grade grubber. I'm sorry, common sense, but I got to throw this in very quickly. My whole life been a grade grubber. So if I felt like, especially if it was on an essay, anything where it was, and so I have many times in my life, all the way through my scholastic career, and I've went to the professor, teacher, whoever it may be, and said, look, man, don't you see that if this is questionable, it seems like I got him right. Here's why. And, because those two questions mean that I go from an A- to an A. Well, that's the old days. Now it's like you're saying, but that was it. I've got to make this very clear. That was me. Mm-hmm. My parents didn't tell me to do it. No one was saying, oh, you poor boy. That was me just wanting a little bit better grade and feeling like I worked hard for it, and that maybe my salesmanship, one of my qualities, would get that for me. Well, nowadays, holy shit, you said it. There's no nurturing of that kind of salesmanship. That kind of salesmanship that will get you the raise before Bob gets it, not because you're better, but because you're better at communicating with the main boss. That's not nurtured either. because someone now comes forward, common sense, and I'm done because I want you to continue whatever you want to say. This is just blowing me away. That this is such a simple thing, but I think many people overlook this horrific problem in society that is probably at least one of the roots, if not the root. And when they say, okay, little Johnny, you didn't get this A, the teacher, the big bad teacher. Come on, man. It used to rest squarely on the shoulders of the student. Now with these what do you call the tests they're always giving people? The kids. Now with these uniform tests, whatever the fuck they're called, that they give them 2 or 3 times a year. If the kids aren't passing, look, it should rest on the student. Now, not if it's a shitty teacher. I'm done. Everybody gets where I'm coming from. And that just blew me away, man. That's this idea. And everybody skips over this. I don't think many people are talking about this particular route.
No, I completely agree with you. I think a lot of people are not talking about the actual psychology that's behind this. But don't think it's necessarily the psychology that's behind it. Don't get me wrong, it's the psychology that's been introduced that is causing the problems. But it's the fact that the ideology of Marxism, feminism, that is taking the points of forming in intersections and being able to put people into different boxes. We don't work as boxes. The whole point of the whole movement is saying, don't label us, we're human, don't label us, is the point of saying, don't label us and put us into fucking boxes. But yet they put us into fucking boxes to be able to say, well, you go here, you're good, you're not, you're oppressed, you're not, this is the reasons why. That doesn't work for our psyche. We also need to be able to form the ideas that everybody is even and starts off even, but you've got to work hard to get to where you're going. The psychology behind that is to be able to work in your head of going, if I work hard, then I can go somewhere. But if you've got somebody that comes last, that gets treated the same as somebody that is first, there is no motivation for that person that comes last to make themselves better. That's a psychology that we are losing from this ideology of thinking that everybody is equal and everybody should be treated and one as equal. It does not work. There are people that are at the lowest end of the social ladder. There are people at the top. There are a lot of fucking people in the middle. And generally, most of us are going to be in the middle. But we've got to work at what we've got to do. And if we keep on getting setback after setback, then we generally get better and better because we learn from our mistakes. That's the best and greatest thing about humanity in itself. We're supposed to learn from our mistakes. That's the greatest thing about, as we just said, our cognitive thought. That's the greatest thing about our human psyche, about knowing ourself. The study of self is to know that we can do better because now we've made mistakes. We now know what we're doing. First of all, we can change it. That's the best thing about humanity, and we don't have that anymore.
That's one of my biggest arguments with the study of psychology is that I do think that introspection and that self-analysis is important. And from the time I first started in the journey, I was told, don't analyze yourself, don't analyze your relatives and your friends. Nonsense. Because as I was saying to Mr. Chicken, that's the way it is, Aaron. I mean, whether or not, I was some prick who was like, well, you never took class A and this and such and blah, blah, blah. So no, it doesn't matter. You've been studying psychology your whole life. Oh, well, boys, what do you say, man? We got some other stories. It's not that we don't have time either, common sense. The next one is pretty kick-ass.
Yeah, it's going to be kick-ass when I fucking beat the shit out of David Miliband.
Because, I keep thinking about psychology. I mean, they're using psychology now on the greater, on Great Britain, on the public at large. And how are they doing that? They keep saying, well, it's not going to happen. It shouldn't happen. We need to do a soft Brexit. We need to do it this way. We need to do it that way. And so this story comes from Common Sense Guy via Sky News. I don't know who wrote this. It's somewhere here, but it's not saying. So I'll give credit to him if I find it. David Miliband, Nick Clegg, and Nikki Morgan warn against, quote, hard Brexit. I bet Common Sense Guy has a hard Brexit he'd like to give David Miliband.
I don't want to give fuck all to David Miliband. I wouldn't even fucking give him the courtesy of beating the shit out of him.
Oh, mercy.
And by the way, everybody, Don't get confused with the two Miliband's. This is not the Miliband that spoke passionately in the House of Lords a couple of days ago. This is the cunt that fucked off to America because he couldn't win a leadership election.
Mercy. Well, we don't really want him here. I don't know if I could speak for the whole country, but
the distance from Britain to America is actually only a couple meters shorter than the distance between Nicky Morgan's eyes.
There is that.
She does have quite the big old wide. She looks like some kind of, I don't know, elephant.
I was going to say she looks like E.T.
She looks like a three-toed sloth, if you want me to be perfectly honest. The face of.
Yeah. Well,
so anyway, yep.
Can you tell me that we don't like these people?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't even know them. We'll find out later if I decide to like them. I do recognize this woman. I'm trying to get closer to your politics, but it's not easy for a Yank. Former Minister David Miliband denies he's trying to launch a new centrist movement and warns Britain it's being held to ransom. You cuck. Former Foreign Secretary David Miliband has urged all parties to come together to prevent a, quote, hard Brexit, saying, Europe is Britain's anchor. Mr. Miliband made an impassioned speech saying he is alarmed at the state of negotiations on Britain's exit from the EU. Mr. Miliband, an ex-Labour cabinet minister, shared a platform with Liberal Democrat former Deputy Minister Sir Nick Clegg and Sir Nick Clegg and the Conservative chairwoman of the Commons Treasury Committee, Nicky Morgan. Speaking at a Tilda rice mill at Rainham, Essex, the trio repeated their statement from a joint article for the Mail on Sunday that Britain was being held to ransom by hardline Brexiteers. They say a hard Brexit threatens jobs and living standards in the UK. Mr. Miliband, who now heads the New York-based, man, you weren't joking, you really did come over, International Rescue Committee ad agency, denied he was seeking to launch a new centrist political movement when asked by the BBC Radio 4 Today program. Quote, this is about calling for MPs of all parties to stand together. I'm sorry, I forgot the accent there. He said, quote, the truth is that Britain is being held to ransom by the demand for hard Brexit, for severing the links with the customs union and the single market that is at the heart of the debate going on at the moment. I'm sorry, man. This guy really, I mean, they're not giving up. It thinks that I'm quoting this now. I may be spelled wrong, but I'm just quoting it. It think that it is significant that people should come together, frankly, out of alarm at prospects for the UK. The prospects of a hard Brexit are very high now. And what's worse, the prospect of no deal is rising too. Man, these quotes. Quote, it does not need to be like this. It is very, very important that the country is not held to the kind of ransom, notice they keep using this word, folks, that at the moment threatens living standards as well as the political influence of the UK in a very fundamental way. I mean, this goes on, boys. It's not much longer. Yeah, I didn't think. Thank God, because I keep reading these quotes, man. All I can say is these people sound like a bunch of fucking ninnies. And I believe in my heart, as I will not say much on this because of being a Yank, I want to obviously hear what you boys say and learn. But this guy sounds like, just in my heart, I believe that the British people are strong tinkerers, inventors of things, ingenuitive, never give up. Stalwart comes to mind. The word stalwart comes to mind. And to hear all this shit, all this naysaying and crybabying, sever it, move on, be Britain. You don't need them.
Well, you know the reasons why is because most of these people are actually earning money from the European Union. And if they're not earning money directly from the European Union, they are being paid to do this. This is the same principle. This is the same principle and the same ideas as what happened to the Lisbon Treaty for Ireland. It's a case of, okay, well, now they voted, we can't give them another vote because they're just going to vote in a higher numbers now because the British are not the same as other people. If you tell us to do something, we will naturally not. And this is more of the point of people going, oh, we need to stay in the customs union on a single market, not realizing that people actually that voted for Brexit didn't do it out of fucking stupidity or ignorance over the immigration laws or anything else like that. They did it because they researched what was going on in Europe. They researched the ideas of what happens in the customs union. They researched the ideas of what happens in the single market and what being in both of those fucking entails. And both of those entail being controlled by the European fucking Court of Justice and being controlled by the European fucking Council, meaning we would not leave fucking Europe. But I'm preaching to the fucking choir on this one because most people in here actually know that.
Well, so everybody here, both of you two, I was hoping that one of you was not a Brexiter, but Crumple, Chicken, you're both Brexiters?
Yeah, I voted Brexit in the end. And in my opinion, this Miliband fellow is your typical example of what Americans would call a snake oil salesman. Don't trust him. And he says he's got no plans to do a centrist party. Well, no, I've lost track of the amount of times Labour has had some kind of leadership contest of one kind or another, and the amount of contenders in each contest said, oh, no, I'm not going to contend for leadership, only for a few weeks, months later, magically turn around and say, yes, I will step forward to be a contender for leader. And it's the way I see it, the same thing now. He's not saying he's going to set up a new party. I think he's just like dipping his toes in the water to test the viability, whether he's going to do it now or come back in 5 years and do it. In my opinion, he's lying.
They're all definitely fucking lying.
Yeah, but I know they're all lying. The question is to what extent are they lying? But I think he's like a 11 out of 10 lying on this one.
Possibly.
Damn.
Yeah. And like I said, to quote an Americanism, all three of them here are snake oil salesmen to a T.
Agreed. I mean, Miliband held a very junior position in was it an opposition or was he in Brown's government? I can't remember. He was environment minister or something.
I think he was in Brown's government.
Like that.
He was a backbencher in Tony Blair's government, and he was coming up to environmental secretary, as you quite rightly said, in Gordon Brown's government.
Yeah, and then he failed the leadership election. He's been a politician his whole life. Before that, he was a researcher for, politicians. That's the very definition of a career politician.
That's this chap or this chap? Which one is it? The red tie or the
red tie?
Yeah, the red tie. That's what I thought. He looks like a fucking snake oil salesman. Pardon me.
Well, both the guys have had exactly the same career as I described, just different positions within government. They both started out as
prime minister. One was a deputy prime minister.
Yeah.
Only in name, but he was
stand-in prime minister.
Yes,
yeah. So they've both had the same crappy, uneventful career. I mean, Nick Clegg has presumably been knighted for his outstanding contribution to failure. Nicky Morgan, she's never had a coherent thought in her life, and Miliband he just says whatever he's paid to say. The fact that it was a joint article that they've written is very telling, because it was probably the one speechwriter that wrote it and they just signed their names at the bottom, because they've never written a speech themselves either. Yeah. And fuck these three. Ogre, I was not just a bloody leaver. I was a leaver back in 2009 before anybody even gave a shit about it. I cannot stand these three. I cannot stand anything they stand for. I don't think they stand for much, to be perfectly honest with you. And I hope they all fuck off very quickly.
So you've been a UKIPper from the very start. That's like when it started, 2008, 2009.
Yeah. Nigel Farage came on talking about high streets in Britain and how we should abolish business rates, and he was on Question Time talking about that. That's the first time I remember seeing them, and then instantly from that point onwards, that was the beginning of my red pilling, I think.
Yeah.
I'm wheedling it down, and this is not off topic. I'm wheedling it down, and I will have 2 roosters. I'll have my hybrid Barred Rock Australorp, and then my full-blooded Australorp. My full-blooded Australorp, who is about a 9.5, 10-pound black cock chicken rooster. You know, I named him Nigel Farage. And he is my prize. He's the only full-blooded bird that I have here. And so anyway.
So to quote Mr. Ogre, we heard it here first, 2018. Mr. Ogre likes a big black cock.
I love a big black cock, big sumbitch. Yes, but carry on. Let's not dwell on that. I would say this though, a more. I mean, I keep looking at this picture, and I know you can't judge a book by its cover. Goodness sake, I love Donald Trump. You don't want to just look at a picture of him and say, "What do you think this guy is?" That's my opinion. I mean, if right now, I mean, it'd be like, "Wow, he looks like a snake oil salesman of some kind." But this group, I mean, I keep looking. The lady looks like she might have an 82. IQ somewhere around room temperature.
You know, if you've ever seen her on Question Time, that is an absolute bang-on assessment.
She's not very intelligent.
She's a flounder. You feel kind of half sorry for her because she just looks like she's drowning whenever anybody asks her a question.
Why do these people get you common sense? You know the answer, but so why is she in any position? How do these people manage?
Because they're paid to what they say. But before I go on to all of that, I just wanted to quickly jog everybody's memory. Nick Clegg is the person that stood up next to Nigel Farage and said that Nigel Farage is a liar for calling out the fact that the European Union wants to make itself into a European superstate, that it was going to call out a European fucking army, it was going to make sure that they have their own sort of national anthem and everything else to that. Nigel Farage called all of them out, and all that Nick Clegg did was say, "You're lying. You're lying." They're not got any ideas to do with this whatsoever.
Well, I think it's just given what you say, because I remember that very well, and you know, we see now that the army is very much on its way to being built. It's very apt that Mr. Ogre named his huge cock Nigel Farage, because Nick Clegg is very much a fucking worm. Yeah. And that is definitely the positions that they had him in during that debate.
Definitely a great analogy. But the actual idea that these three are talking together and have the same ideas. Now remember, they're trying to portray this idea as the three parties joining together. Because remember, you have the fact that these are an ex-Labour minister, you have a working Conservative minister, and you have a former Liberal Democrat. So you have our three biggest parties, so to speak. Obviously, two biggest and the Liberal Democrat.
No, Nicky Morgan got fired. They're all failures.
Oh, did she?
Yes, she got fired.
Ah.
So this is a monument to fucking failure, whatever this party is going to be.
So this is that is a fucking monument to literally failure. That picture, just take it. Put it next to the definition of failure and leave it there. Everybody will know what it means.
Yeah, in the encyclopedia, just no words required. But Nicky Morgan, Mr. Ogre asks why she's there. She's there because of political tokenism, because if you actually look, you have a Lib Dem, a Conservative, and a Labour. So people will think that they are safer in migrating from their old party to this new abomination. And the idea that this is why everybody gets so confused when they go to the ballot box, or they just don't go at all, because they're talking about forming a centrist party. Now, centre in Britain is, hard socialist in 1950s, know. So a centrist party now, okay, it's not as hard socialist as Corbyn, but it's very, very socialist. And Conservatives now are socialist light. So, the idea that anybody could get any more centre ground is impossible, and the centre ground is constantly shifting towards, let's not say left wing, let's say authoritarianism. But the centre ground is constantly shifting towards authoritarianism, and that's why those three are there, because they represent three of the main parties in Britain, and people their Stockholm syndrome will kick in, and they'll want to vote for something new, but have a bit of familiarity.
So Clegg is the Labour. He's
no.
It says he's the leader of the Liberal Democrats from 2007 to 2015.
Yes, correct.
a good way to tell them apart is always the colour of the ties, because Labour Party is the red. It
Yeah,
obviously got
and
red.
blue. Yeah.
That's the middleman with his red tie. Lib Dems are the yellow team, if you will, and he's got his yellow tie on. And whoever the Tory person is, if it's a bloke, they'll always have a blue tie on.
Wow,
They're
that's
very
weird. That's
colour.
the opposite of
They're,
here.
they're
No,
very.
he's got a purple tie on, which is very
Yeah.
telling because what do you get if you mix red and blue?
Mixture, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never understood why it's that, but they always tend to be very color coded like that. So, yeah.
Well, that's quite easy. That's to do with subliminal messaging. It's to
Of
make
course.
people realize that if you like the Liberal Democrats,
Yes.
you know they're yellow.
Of
So whenever
course.
somebody with a yellow tie comes on, you don't actually associate them with the Liberal Democrats,
Yes.
and vice versa for everything else.
Well,
But
no, the party, it's INSOG, man. It's just, yeah, carry on.
yeah, just very, very quickly. I like this idea that they keep on trying to push. The idea that they're going to form a new centrist party. I'm not bothered about them forming a new party. That's not the fucking issue. They've come up with 3 different ideas, 3 different plans that I'm aware of at this moment in time. And each one says it's going to be a centrist. It's the idea of trying to portray that they are trying to be as centrist as possible. They're going to take everybody's ideas into account. They're going to be egalitarian in their choices, but yet they're all against Brexit. Yes, they're all against Brexit.
All of them.
Every single centrist party that's being made is against Brexit. Every centrist party is against the idea of capitalism fully. Every centrist group is against fucking most things that you would hold dear. The idea of not taxing the rich too high because they fucking have urban flight. It's a case of they are all against these policies. They don't want them to happen, and they're supposed to be fucking centrist. I'm sorry, you're not fucking centrist.
Yeah, they're full of shit.
So to be clear, nowadays the word centrist is how you spell communist.
Very probably.
Yes.
Very probable.
Yeah, there's another word beginning with C that fucking applies to this lot, but
Cunt.
they
Let
like
me guess,
to push
it's got
this
4 letters.
this idea of, what does he say, that Europe is Britain's anchor. Yeah, it's an anchor, and we're a ship, and we want to get fucking moving, and the anchor's no fucking use. So cut it off because it's lodged on something, and we ain't going anywhere. You know, an anchor has the purpose of keeping a ship still, and ships are meant to sail. So fuck this lot, and let's get moving. I mean, the world is primed and puckered for British enterprise. It doesn't need any foreplay. It doesn't need any lube. We are going in hard Brexit. That's the only way to do it.
People think that the United States couldn't fall. All I can say is that it wasn't very long ago, and they used to say that the sun never set on the British Empire. And what happened? They were cucked. They were cucked out of their empire by I mean, Great Britain ended slavery, for any of y'all that in the modern world, in the Western world, for any of y'all that don't realize that. Great Britain, they were the biggest rolling stone that started down. I mean, so this is how it happens. They take away your manhood. They take away your ability to be proud of your country. They say that Tommy Robinson is a traitor when he's a patriot. They say that it's diversity is your strength, which means, of course, we all know what that means. I'm going to stop here.
Well, I find it quite interesting that I'm going to absolutely fuck up your name because I'm not great at, I assume, Japanese. There is a gentleman that's just popped into the chat called Takio Itagachi. And as I said, I'm really sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. I'm not doing it on purpose. But has literally just come in and said, oh, I was searching for immigration live streams, and amazingly enough, you guys popped up. So I thought that was quite interesting. I mean, I do have it in the title, so that might be an interesting factor.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but that's something that it would. Yeah. So welcome, Techie. Yes. Somebody that crumplpoint, say that name.
That name will be pronounced Takeo Itagaki, I think. Takeo Itagaki.
Itagaki. I just knew you could do that from listening to all your comic book stuff. You can pronounce all that weird stuff. I'm sorry, I mumbled that with all due respect, Takio. I mean, I don't mean it's weird to me. I don't need to fucking apologize for that. It's just the way, and that's the whole cucking. That's the cucking of our nation that's happening now. It's because at the moment we're the whole the shebango as Great Britain. I mean, remember the days, boys, when we weren't here in Great Britain, man, when any navy on earth, in fact, when any country on earth thought of your tiny little island, this little insignificant drop of sweat from the gods on the planet, this tiny little island, they would tremble.
And the actual island of Ireland was the shit of that sweat.
Yeah. yes, probably. Anyway, without being more eloquent than that, I mean, think about it. It's gone, man. It's going to be gone from the United States. Who are they going to give it to, boys?
Well, see, I was having this conversation.
China's going to fucking take it.
Yeah, probably.
I
was having this... That's the stuff of nightmares. They're your dystopian future today.
Come on down and buy a dystopian future today.
But buy?
Yeah, well, buy with love, or your labor.
I will laugh so hard if the next superpower in the world after America is Mexico.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Hey, they'll work hard enough.
Whatever. I'm just going to go with no. I was talking to somebody on Twitter about this situation beforehand, and I found it absolutely funny how this person was going. Basically, he was just calling me names, which is fine. I can deal with that. It's not a problem. But when I got down to his actual general arguments, it was a case of, trade's not going to work. And he gave me this prediction. I'm sure some people have seen me retweet it and tell him that he made a fucking mistake on it. And he tweeted me this thing for a prediction for 2030. And it had Germany just above us on GDP. And then it had India. Then it had China. And then it had US. And I said to him, well done. You've just made the exact argument for fucking Brexit. The fact that all of these are places and things that we want to trade with, but yet the EU is stopping us. Well done for making that argument for me. You're a fucking idiot. So I said that to him. I didn't hear anything about that argument anymore. That argument got taken away. But the most important thing that I took from that was that people that actually argue on the economical side of things think that we're actually not going to trade with Europe afterwards. They think that we're going to end it. And they don't understand that if we do leave EU, even without making any deals, even if we didn't make deals with India, China, or whatever, or even with the US, we are part of the Commonwealth. We would immediately go into trading with our Commonwealth partners. The only reason why we can't, guess what? EU, because the EU would have to do trade deals with the rest of our Commonwealth. And we won't do that.
Yeah, I mean, that guy was hilarious, and you fairly trounced him. I was watching that one, and the thing with this bullshit is, like, we want to leave, and everybody's like, oh, but like you say, they are under the impression that we don't want to trade with Europe at all. That we say we do, but we don't, because that makes any fucking sense. But the television told them it's true, so it must be true. They haven't actually thought whether that makes any real world fucking sense or not. But every Remainer I have argued with, they argue about the language of the politicians. They don't argue about how that affects the real world. So I tell them that the European Commission and the European Parliament are anti-democratic. And they quote to me the mandate or the motions carried by the Parliament and by the Commission. And I'm like, yeah, it says it's democratic. That's fine. Anything can say anything. But they don't vote. And the votes cannot overturn the Commission. And the Commission are unelected. And then, so the evidence shows it's not democratic. But they always go by the language.
That was another thing that he posted. Not that I'm picking on this guy. It's just the thing that was the closest thing. But he posted a list about people that were being supposedly elected in the European Council and whatever, and then what goes on in our British politics. And that's the reason why I liked it at the beginning, because I was just like, yeah, well, that's the whole reason why it's not democratic where ours is. Expecting him to understand what actually democracy was, and it just to do a spoiler, it turned out he didn't. But I went through the whole fucking picture with him about the European Commissioner, the European chancellors, and everything else like that. I went through all of that with him, and he still didn't fucking get it. The fact that the people did not vote him in, the people that were elected voted secretly to get those people in. That he just did not comprehend that, and how that's not democratic.
Well, this is the thing. The commission does get elected, but the people that elect the commission are not elected.
Exactly.
So they always play this game where if you try and argue with them and you try and argue them on these sorts of things, they'll have you chasing your tail because the language is airtight. And this is the thing of it's the reality versus rhetoric always.
Exactly.
And the reality is that it's an anti-democratic institution, that the idea that the European countries wouldn't trade with us is ridiculous.
Exactly.
And as we've seen with the European army, it's a coming, ladies and gentlemen. So when we're talking reality, we win every time. But when you're talking rhetoric, okay, you might have us running in a circle, but that's rhetoric. It doesn't mean anything, Sophocles.
Yep. No, absolutely fucking correct on that point. Just to go on to Brexit for one last point, and then we'll move on to another story. With the whole idea of everybody always keep on saying, as crumplpoint and I've already said, and obviously others as well, they honestly feel that with this point of like leaving Europe, it means that we're not going to trade with them. And it's a case of how can we live and function without trading with our biggest trade partners? It's not the case that we want to leave Europe and close our borders and close fucking everything off to the Europeans. It's a case of, no, we want our control. We want our sovereignty. We want to be able to govern ourselves. I don't want somebody in another country telling our country what we can and cannot do. That's not how democracy works. That's not how the idea of democracy was even fucking fathomed of. That is a dictatorship. That is having an outside ruler rule you. That is almost like a conquered monarchy.
It's an empire, isn't it?
Annexed state.
Yeah.
I think you've
colony.
You've just reminded me earlier on today, this afternoon, before things start, I happened to watch one of Dave Cullen's videos. I think it was Dave Cullen.
Yeah.
And he said the UK are hosting a summit to the point of getting like places like Albania and then little countries there to become members of the EU. And it was like, well, hang on, and people apparently called up the UK. It's like, I forget the details of all this. You're gonna have to watch Dave Cullen's video. But we were called out and saying, hang on a minute, you've just voted to leave the EU, and yet you're hosting a summit to get new member states in. What's going on here, mate? And some rhetoric style answer was given in response, but it just struck a bit funny in my head. You've just reminded me.
It wasn't a rhetoric response. The response was the case of actually saying that the people that are hosting the summit actually believe, which is Boris Johnson, by the way, actually believe that the European Union is the basis for all trade. It's an anchor, as used in the other fucking story, as we just used. The rhetoric is being aligned, and it's being aligned for a purpose. The idea that it's being ransomed, the idea that we're being held hostage, they're not normal words. They're words that in psychology install the fact of we need to fight back. It's not a case of people trying to democratically oppose what's going on, even though technically they can't democratically oppose what's going on, but let's give them the illusion and foresight of saying that maybe it is. But even going through that point, it's a case of they're getting ready for a fight. They're not going through the process of a democratic process at all. They're going through the process of building up rhetoric to start an army to make sure that they can get enough people behind them. The only thing
it's empire building, classic empire building.
Exactly.
And
exactly that point.
They're not. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder there.
Yeah, you did. You just don't like me talking.
I love the sound of your silky voice.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to the good old days of empire building where you just invaded the neighbours or your military?
Well, all joking aside, I think it's the case that we pretended to become more civilized.
See, the thing with this is, though, common sense and, well, you first, Aaron, talked about the responses given, and then common sense talked about the language of the responses. And the thing is, if you look at the European Union's responses to anything related to Brexit, it is the language of a dictator. is the language of somebody who is not negotiating, who is not accountable to anyone. If you look at like President Juncker, selected, not elected, if you look at his responses, they're always absolutist ultimatums. And that tells you everything you need to know, in my opinion. If you even look at Donald Tusk, he tried to sound a little bit more approachable, but again, it's always dictatorial language.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, but it's only just a little bit.
Well, you talk about the actual the rhetoric and the voices that they use and everything. Have you ever heard of anybody go, "We're in negotiations, but you tell us what you want to do, and we'll tell you if we're going to have it or not"? It's not how negotiations work. It's time wasting. That's the whole principle of what's going on with the European Union. They want to make us time waste, so we either leave on World Trade Organization's rules, or we get a really shit deal, and it's something that goes into the single market again, which is then controlling us under the carpet, under the illusions of us leaving.
Yeah, because they'll have gotten us to give up our representation by that. Well, I say representation, it doesn't actually count for anything if you don't get a vote. But yeah, I think you're correct.
No pois.
I mean, it is a bit like Eurovision in that, we all just watch and they've already made up their mind what points they're going to give people well beforehand. But with the what'd you call it? Sorry, having a brain fart.
What are you
I'm just reminded of that ancient American idiom. How did it go? No taxation without representation.
Quite so. And it said that yes, taxation without representation is tyranny, which is exactly what the freaking EU is. The thing is, though, it's very blatantly expansionist as well.
Just before you continue, my friend, and then please carry on. But the idea that even with people who go, "Oh, we get the money back, we actually make money off of things." No, we fucking don't. There's a reason why we pay in percentagely, even with our rebate, we still pay percentagely the second highest fucking entrance fee into Europe, and get almost the least back. The only person that pays in more than us is Germany, but they get twice the fucking money back. Work that one out. Why does Germany get more money than anybody else?
But you can't have your cake and eat it, though, because like if we get our money back in full, then why are we in it? Why not just keep the money? And if we don't get our money back, then, well, surely it's going to a good cause, and you can tell us what the good cause is,
Well, the good cause is supposed to be the idea of helping places like Greece, helping places like Portugal that don't have massive economies that can look after themselves, to get rid of high youth employment, to get rid of high employment in itself, to be able to make sure that the tourist attractions are actually got people that are going to work in it. And then you've got places like Hungary and places like that are making sure that they've got proper democracies installed. And yeah, since they've done that, it's all fucked up.
Because as you know, common sense, that's our fucking problem, isn't it? What's going on in Greece? But look at, I remember what I was able to say when I had a brain fart. Miliband has a bloody cheek with all this EU shite, right? Because I remember back in the day when he was in the Labour Party, he was talking about direct democracy. How do you get direct democracy in the EU? Because that was one of the things that kept me on Labour's side for a little while longer than I probably otherwise would have been, was the fact that both the Milibands were talking about direct democracy and as much local voting as possible, taking things away from Westminster, because UKIP were talking about it. And that's just like, well, how do you get that with something like the EU? And that's why these guys are just flagrant liars.
Well, I'm not 100% sure that all of them are flagrant liars. I'm not going to say that they are or they're not, but I'm not sure. I honestly do feel that some of these, not all of them, people like Nick Clegg and David Miliband, no, not so much. I don't think that some of them don't actually know what's going on. That if we do stay in the single market or the customs union, then Europe is actually in control. Now, I'm not trying to say all of them. I'm saying it's a small percentage, especially with the young voters that are coming through with the young movement and everything, which they're fucking nasty fuckers, by the way, if you ever talk to them on Twitter. They are proper fucking nasty because all they do is go, well, you're going to die soon, so it doesn't matter. I've got to inherit what mistakes you've made. I think of how nasty that fucking is.
Yeah.
But it's a case that some of them don't actually know what's going on, where a lot of them do, but they're just getting paid by the European Union, especially with a lot of the lords, which, surprise, surprise, is the reasons why they're doing the bills. But yeah.
Yep. And then again, you've got the ones that are quite open about the fact that they want to absolutely shaft the whole nation up the arse, like Ken Clark, for instance, who's reasonably open. Hesseltine.
Do you know what I hate about them?
Was it Nigel Lawson? They're all quite open about the fact that they don't think we're smart enough for democracy.
No, there's very, very, very fucking true on them too.
So they're not liars.
After I finish this, please carry on. But it's a case with Ken Clark and Lord Heseltine, considering that they're conservative lords or conservative MPs in some cases as well. Same as Anna Salisbury. All the people that are remaining, it's such a surprise that they get so much airtime on the BBC, ITV, and fucking Sky News that are all against the idea of Brexit. Such a fucking surprise that those people get all of the attention, and people like Jacob Rees-Mogg don't get any attention until they actually have somebody that needs to be against it.
Well, that's the funny thing, because a lot of people like yourself, Common Sense, and others, I've noticed, say that the BBC have got a left-wing bias. Never mind the why and wheres about that for a moment, but it struck a chord with me a few weeks ago, browsing through Facebook and a couple of left-wing Facebook groups I happened to see posts from. They all believe, these left-wing groups believe that the BBC have got a right-wing bias, and they're pretty determined that they have.
Yes.
So I was like, well, hang about. Even though I don't pay attention to such details as much as everyone else does, even I can see there may be a bit of a left-wing bias going on the BBC. So where do these lefties get the idea that there's a right-wing bias going on?
Well, that plays into the idea of psychology, to the idea where they are looking for more of their confirmation bias. So when things that they think about don't align with their political views, they mark it down as a fact that it's something that's against their view. So they do what we would do on the left, on the like slightly left side or the right side or whatever. They do things like that, but the thing is, it adds up more because they disagree with them a hell of a lot more until it comes to things like Brexit.
Okay, well, yeah, it was just something I noticed. Everything. Oh, pardon you. I just noticed that, like I said, a few weeks ago for the first time, and it's just stuck in my head ever since.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about Brexit for long enough. To be fair, I mean, it's coming up to fucking Q2, and we've only got.
Crap! Could I just come back quickly on that point about the bias?
Of course.
Very quickly. The fact is that Labour and Conservative disagree on almost nothing. And the rabid extremism of the left means that nothing will ever be good enough for them. And there are no real conservatives left in Britain that I ever speak to. So they will always believe that they are being biased against, because both the voters from both parties, they don't agree with what their own parties are doing, but they've not looked into that. All they know is they disagree with the other guy. Yeah. And so they look in the mirror and they disagree with what they see. Yeah, and that's why they believe they're biased against.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's not a case of political ideologies that are now going to war. It's a case of what they perceive as ideological people going to war. It's nothing to do about politics anymore. Everything's ideological and gone into tribal modes.
Yep, it's almost like a cultism.
Yes, indeed. Should we do the Gaza clash, or should we do Operation Sanctuary? I'm going to open it up to the board, but if the chat can put one for us talking about Operation Sanctuary, which is about grooming gangs in Newcastle, or the Gaza clash about 55 people now that have apparently been confirmed dead attacking Israel. So 1 for Operation Sanctuary, 2 for Gaza. What about the panel? What does the panel want to do as well?
Well, let's let them vote. So far, Quinn's got in here. So for Captain Copile, we got 2-2s. Let's let them vote, if you don't mind, common sense, because we've been doing our thing the whole time. So far, it's a unanimous twos. Let's give them another. Come on, in fact, I'm going to look at the clock. We're going to bullshit for one more minute, not even 30 seconds. And in fact, Hammered Spud says 2 because 1's just depressing. But you know what, Hammered Spud, that's one of the things that we do here. And believe me, Common Sense Guy and myself, we don't thrill to the idea of exposing these.
No, it downright pisses me off, which is the reason why I need to spread it.
Well, I'd like to ask you both for a minute,
doesn't.
And say that partly that is why I have loved the show for so long, is because I like current affairs and I like news, but I cannot bring myself to listen to any of the programs on television or radio, except maybe the odd InfoWars, because at least they're getting angry about it, even if it's a bit mental. But here, it's actual, fair, honest coverage of actual stuff that's going on that nobody else is talking about.
Yeah. Well, I think the 2s have it. AlphaGo says, to hell with us, and sorry, but 1 and 2. We'll go with this, and we'll try to ease out on this, because we do have another good show coming up that I'm not going to plug right at this moment, but it's coming up, here directly. And I don't know, maybe some of the people here would like to participate in it. Maybe not. Who knows? This, once again, coming from Common Sense Guy via the BBC News. Credit going to, once again, sometimes they don't just put a bio line right up here at the top. So we will carry on from there. Credit due where it's due. Gaza clashes, 52 Palestinians killed on deadliest day since 2014. At least 52 Palestinians have been killed and 2,400 wounded by Israeli troops, Palestinian officials say, on the deadliest day of violence since the 2014 Gaza war. Palestinians have been protesting for weeks, but deaths soared on the day the U.S. opened the embassy in Jerusalem. Palestinians see this as clear U.S. backing for Israel rule over the whole city, whose eastern part they claim. Who knows what country Jerusalem lies within? Just don't answer now. I just want you to think about that as I read. And I'll be damned. Don't we claim all of Washington, D.C.? Don't y'all claim all of London? But U.S. President Donald Trump hailed the move in a video message. He told the dedication ceremony that it had been a long time coming, adding, Israel is a sovereign nation with the right to determine its own capital. But for many years, we failed to acknowledge the obvious. And that is, I believe, the entirety of the story. Well, oh, no, I guess it goes on. How much? Oh, I see. It's advertised. So how far do I go, Common Sense? A little bit more?
I think we've kind of got the gist of it. The people that are supposedly, according to this BBC article, are doing absolutely nothing wrong have had 54 people die. Well, 55 people now, because I've just had a news alert. 55 people die, and as you said, over 1,000 people fucking injured or more, whatever. Look, I'm going to be very, very honest. I'm not 100% sure on if Palestine or if Israel should be the country that exists. I'm not 100% sure, and I'm not going to go into it. But Israel is the country that exists at the moment. Israel is the country that has borders, that has the bits that are around it. These people that are coming to Israel have been excluded from Israel, as they have said it and called it. These are what you would call illegal immigrants trying to come into a bordered country. Now, they're not coming in peacefully. They are throwing rocks. They are trying to attack the Israeli police and the Israeli army that are policing the border, and yet wonder why that they are being shot at. I'm not saying that I agree with everything that Israel does. I'm not saying I agree with Palestine. But if you look at it from just this section and just this point, it's a case that Palestinians, should I say, are actually making an advance on a sovereign state, and the sovereign state is defending themselves. That's the way I see it. I'm sorry, I can't see it any other way.
Well, when you phrase it like that, it's hard for me to disagree. At least on the get go. When it comes to this move by Trump to move the embassy to Jerusalem, as I understand it, a decision was made in America back in 1995 to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital.
We've had every
And
president has promised that since Nixon, sir.
sorry?
Every president has promised this since Nixon. Trump is only the first one to do it.
Oh, Nixon then. Okay. That's
Every
fine.
last one, every president since Nixon, they've all said they were going to do this. Ford, every last one of them has said they're going to do it. Trump is the first one to actually follow through.
Okay, well, I stand corrected because I heard something in the news today. It was 95, but either way, whichever way it comes down to it, my thought was the moment the decision was made to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, sooner or later, it was going to happen. Whether it would be whether Nixon actually did it, or if Obama had done it, or is some president.
Remember, Aaron, I hate to interrupt you again. Now keep your train of thought, but please. But remember, they all promised they would do it or said they would do it. Some of them in very ambiguous ways, but they all said they would do it. So it's not like there was a decree made by Nixon, but carry on.
Oh, that's fine. I appreciate that. But what I'm trying to get is that because those words were said in the first place, then sooner or later, the actions to back up those words were bound to happen, whether it be today under Trump or under some president 20 years in the future or 12 years ago. Either way, the point still remains, the moment those words are spoken, sooner or later the action was bound to happen. So what did everyone expect to happen? If you understand what I'm trying to say.
Well, yeah, because what you're saying,
I think it's fair.
The genie is out of the bottle as soon as someone mentioned it. So as soon as someone actually wanted to make it happen, they could at least reference that. And it was, I mean, that's, I don't know how else to say it. Yeah, the genie's out of the bottle. The horse is out of the barn.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
What do y'all think, though? I mean, I'm a Jew, so I want to be as quiet about this as I can, except for the vitriol that I have against these bastards that have the audacity to say what someone can do in the capital city of their own country. But what do y'all think? I mean,
well, I will say, as I said before, it's a case of, yeah, okay, you could argue possibly that the country was bought and sold and then created. You could argue that, and the fact that maybe it happened at 1948 or whatever. It's a case that the country was legitimate. It's a legitimate sovereign state. There has been fighting for years under the ideas of trying to implement a two-tier state. By that meaning that they have a two-tier capital city in the state, which can't really work. Just think about that. That's either having North and South London divided or half and half of London divided.
Don't give them ideas.
And one being English, or one being Scotland and one being English.
Yeah, don't give them ideas. That's a good point.
it kind of doesn't really work. It couldn't really work either. It's too far away, for instance. But it still comes to the point that, is a sovereign state allowed to defend itself when it's being attacked? Say, for instance, that I started throwing rocks at a police station. They're allowed to arrest me, right? So if I'm doing that to a police station and I go to an army base and I start doing that and I start hitting the army officers and the people in the army, are they not allowed to do anything back to me in forms of defense if they're allowed to give them the army?
They always say rocks like they're throwing buns as well. Like, a fucking rock will kill you, you know? Like, I see these guys on the Mexican border. They showed you they only get salt guns. They're not allowed to carry actual guns to shoot at the Mexicans. And you see that actually the Mexicans have the upper hand.
Well, and they want
you to think that cars are.
They want you to think they're throwing rocks like this too, Crumple Point. But like you're saying, they are like buns because they're this big. And if you get clunked with one of them, man,
your jammy center's the one that's coming out.
Exactly. Exactly. But then you have to remember they're also using catapults. They're also burning tires to try and smoke them out. They're also throwing Molotov cocktails over as well. This is not what they would call a peaceful demonstration. No. This is them actually trying to force their way in and actually attack Israel as it is. Now, as I said, I don't agree with everything that Israel's done. I don't agree with everything that Palestine's done. But if you look at it as what's going on, it is one set of people trying to attack another sovereign state, and forcibly. They are allowed to defend themselves. If they weren't trying to break into a different country and turn themselves around, they would not. Oh, fuck. I just spilled all my beer.
We're the only ones left, though, common sense. I want everybody to bear this in mind. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but the sons of Ishmael and the sons of Isaac are the only cultures left that are that old. And the only difference is one was Hagar and one was Sarah. I mean, it's just the difference between, it was just the difference between mothers and the same father. And then you have the Muslims and you have us Jews. Anyway,
that actually fits with my. Go ahead, Aaron. I'll wait.
Sorry, I do apologize. Forgive me, but
No, that's right.
I don't know anything about my Bible or religious studies. I don't understand what Mr. Ogre referenced there.
Well, it's not religious, man. I'm talking about history. I mean, you can go by religious things if you want, but the fact of the matter is that there were Jews, have been Jews around since, for sure, about 3,000 years BC. and there, I don't know where the Egyptians are. Jews were there during the building of the pyramids. There's no doubt about that. They lived in Goshen. That's not just the Bible. That's history. And Muslims have also been around in the form of, this other. Anyway, I mean, it doesn't have to be religion that goes there, but I think
Crumple Point was saying for everybody to understand what Ogre's trying to say.
Sorry, Crumple Point. I know you had an idea. I was going to go back there. Go ahead, common sense. I mean, we're
easy so everybody can understand what's going on. Ogre's actually trying to explain to everybody that it's the fact that all of them believe in the God Abraham. All of them believe in the ideas, including Muslims, that Jesus was around. Some make him a prophet, some in one particular religion does not.
And Jews and Muslims don't really care for Jesus either way, so remember that.
Muslims actually classify him as a prophet. They just don't think that he was the last prophet. Not that I want to defend it, but I'm just being fucking honest.
No, you're right.
Mm-hmm. But that's just what it is. It's the fact that Ogre's saying that all of them are believing in the Abrahamic God. Some call him different names, but that's what it is. It's the fact that they should all be appreciative and understand each other's religion, but yet they don't. So that's
we're brothers. And we're also brothers. But Crumple Point, I know that you had something. You even said you wanted to finish an idea. So where were we at when we all abruptly cut you off?
No, that's fine, because my point, I think, dovetails nicely with yours. Because I was trying to organize my thoughts on this in my head in a way that it keeps it relevant to the story, but doesn't get, you can get off very far into very long grass with this
long grass
area of the world. And I think your description of it sits nicely with mine in that I think that the Israel versus Palestine thing is almost irrelevant, because what you have is you have the Jews and you have what they will call themselves the Palestinians. And they are two historically oppressed, desperate sets of people who are being used in a proxy war against both Saudi Arabia and whoever is controlling Israel. You want to call them the Zionists or the globalists, whatever. And so the Jews and the Palestinians are almost irrelevant. They're just the foot soldiers. They're just the people being squeezed. It's Saudi Arabia versus, globalist or Zionist interests. And ironically enough, if you follow the money, both sides actually are working for all the same people. Because, I mean, America backs Saudi, and Saudi sends Stinger missiles to Palestine. So this is just some kind of weird proxy war. And people, it's easy to get caught up in the identity politics and easy to get caught up in the heritage and the culture and the humanitarian depressing mess that it is. But the Israel-Palestine thing is almost irrelevant, and you need to remember that it's a proxy war, and the proxy war will be fought, and it's the interests that are behind that proxy war that people should be angry about. I don't think they should be angry at the Jews or the Palestinians. The Palestinians have been hammered to the point of desperation, and the Jews had nowhere else to go and were put in Israel as a safe place for them after however long of absolute persecution. So they're two what I would say would be traumatized societies almost that are being used as foot soldiers for these interests, and the only really difference between them that I can see is that the Israelis have just been better at fighting, and
Okay.
that's pretty much all it is.
Better technology, but let's remember too, please, everyone, look at a map of the Middle East. If the Muslims are so tight and they love each other and Allah and all this stuff, well, if their brothers need a place to stay, to live, look at Israel. It's a very tiny little spot. And you can say what you want about the holy references to, well, so is Mecca. So as you said, they're protecting. I mean, it's all a big scam to me. So if they all they would have to do is get together Jordan, Syria, I mean Saudi Arabia, they could carve out a little piece of shitty desert that was exactly like Israel and let whoever considered themselves Palestinians to go there. I'm going to say that, understate this, as a Jewish person, every Muslim that believes that their heritage goes back to Ishmael would logically be my relation. This is a family feud. The Hatfields and the McCoys, there's nothing there. This is a family feud that goes back millennia. And, maybe someday it will end. This will be the biblical part, Aaron Random Chicken. And it's this. The Bible does say that there would be no reconciliation. They would never, I don't know, man. God is merciful. Jehovah, he's merciful. And I believe that he could turn away from that sentence. He's done it in the past. He's said things like that in the past and turned away from it. So I pray to Jehovah that he would do that. And for those of you that think that's superstition or whatever, fine. Well, then do whatever you got to do. Write your senator and see if that's any more superstition than my prayer.
Well, that's the funny thing, isn't it? That all of this is about a belief system. Whether you believe in the idea of democracy, a republic, or authoritarianism, or dictatorship, or a monarchy, or Muslim, or Hinduism, or Christianity, all this fighting, all that we ever seem to fight about as a human race, as the actual race of ourselves, is always to do with ideological points. We think that being able to fight somebody over ideological points makes us superior over them because we can control them with our strength. Doesn't really matter nowadays with that sort of point. It's the fact of getting your ideas out there and actually challenging them. It's the case nowadays we don't do that. We still do exactly the same as what we've always done, even though we're supposed to be more civilized, even though we're supposed to be more able to talk to people, and that's what we've been told, pen's mightier than the sword and all that shit. It's a case that nowadays we still don't fucking talk to people anymore. And then we get to the point of fighting, then we have the fight. But why do we have to do that? Why can't we just talk about the illogical points and actually just make him that sort of point? Why can't we take the ideology? Why can't we take the belief systems out of it and just talk like plain humans?
I think people are far too proud of our entrenched positions to even consider that. Never mind do it. I mean, there comes a point where people have been fighting for so long and for so hard, they simply don't know how to stop fighting anymore. And it's gonna.
But that goes into the point of saying that people that are veterans and things like that don't ever stop fighting, and they do stop fighting.
I'm not sure about that. I mean,
I was using it as an analogy to go with your point. I wasn't saying that is a general fact. I was using it as an analogy.
Well, I think so. You've got me about. I may be leaping here, but I think we train our soldiers to know when to stop fighting. At least we're supposed to train our soldiers to know when to stop fighting, for whatever reason. But when you've got civilians on the ground, like in Israel and Palestine, who haven't had that same kind of professional training on how to get their heads right, know when to stop, and all that. That's the kind of thing going on. Those people have been fighting for so long, for so hard. Like I just said, they don't know how to stop. And as much as you'd love to just bang their heads together and say, "Oh, you stop that," no, just.
But that's not what I'm saying. That's not even what I'm suggesting.
I may have misunderstood what you're saying. I think you've just thrown me a
Well,
curveball.
this goes into what Ogre was saying about the other Muslim countries in the area, because this is what propelled me very quickly out of the Palestine lobby, and we can talk about that another time. But what was happening was I was not getting answers to very important questions, and those were questions like, if what kind of damage would the Palestinians be doing to Israel if they could? Because the reason they're throwing rocks and firing the odd crappy missile that's built by Hamas out of old car parts into Israel is because it's all they've got, because Israel have knocked out their other military capabilities. If they could, what would they be firing at Israel? If the Iron Dome didn't exist, what kind of damage would be done to Israel? It's only this bad a humanitarian crisis because the only option for Israel is to win. So then the question becomes, well, surely if the problem is this pincer movement between the Saudis and the Israelis, and the Israelis can't let the Palestinians in, surely the logical answer is to put pressure on Saudi Arabia and our governments to put pressure on Saudi Arabia. And I wasn't getting answers to questions like this, and nobody was prepared to look at it from the pragmatic military standpoint of, if Israel let up on the pressure, then they start to fall back again by default. So the only answer is to take the pressure out of the cooker by making Saudi Arabia and its allies let Palestinian refugees into Muslim countries, but they won't do it. And all these sorts of questions going around are what propelled me very quickly out of the Palestinian lobby, not because I don't feel sorry for the people who have to live in that godforsaken shithole, but because the lobby itself, I was realizing, was becoming, and it relates back to this Jeremy Corbyn anti-Semitism thing, is they get you young and angry about the Israel situation. You start talking about Zionism, and you mean Zionism, but the other people who are genuinely anti-Semitic, that gives them cover. And that's, I had realized I was being used for that.
Yeah. Just if I may, very, very, very quickly, I want to go back to Aaron's point. When you are fighting in general, as hard as what people are fighting for, you have a motive, you have a reason. If you talk about that motive, if you talk about that reason, those people, no matter how long they've been fighting for, lose the will to fight because they have got, or near enough got, what they wanted. That's the way that you stop wars. That's the way you stop insurgencies, by getting the ideological points out of it. That's
makes a
what
lot
I
of
was
sense.
meaning.
It makes a lot of sense. It's just very hard in practice, winning the hearts and minds, so to speak. You know, I mean, it's hard in practice.
Well, it's also hard to get these ideological sides to admit that they don't want to give up their ideology, because if they give Palestine and Israel what they want, then that reveals the fact that their interests, and I say they, the governments that are backing these two countries, that reveals that they are not interested in the people that live in this area. They are interested in selling weapons and keeping us in our countries scared of these parts of the world, so that they can show us clips of Israel and Palestine and say, hey, wait, if you don't vote for us, and if you think about going against our will, you're one step away from ending up like these fuckers.
Yeah.
Just a quick point to chat while we're still carrying on. Do you want us to carry on this story, or are we all ready to go over to Mad Dodge?
I'm wiped out, brother.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm all good.
Yeah. What about you, Aaron?
I'm safe. I'm safe. Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna have our last words, though, right?
Of course, as we all would.
Sorry, of course.
Yeah, that tradition has not stopped. I've always got the people out on that one. Normally, it's a case of them going, "I'm really happy I was here," and then fucking off. But that's
yeah, I've been taking mental notes. I'm ready.
No, that's fine. What we can do is then, if everybody's ready and happy, go off with Aaron going first, then crumplpoint, then Mr. Ogre, and then myself.
Crap.
So,
Aaron? All right. Well, obviously, thank you for having me on this live stream tonight. I've really enjoyed being here and talking with everyone. It's made me have some really meaty things to think about and consider. And I don't know, I just hope everyone's enjoyed this live stream, and when we all go our ways tonight, I hope you all have a good night and that you have a good time with your friends and your family as the following days and weeks go by despite the depressing news. There you are.
Well said.
Yes, very well said. And it was nice to be on stream with Aaron. Not met him before, so that was cool. I think I know how to use my final word now, so I'm going to do it properly. I was wanting to just think briefly about. I was talking to a couple of people about this idea, and it really fits well tonight, of reacting to threats that aren't there. And I akined it to when a car is coming at you. This is not a situation to think first and move second. You react. You have to jump out of the way of that car. It's a legitimate reaction. But sometimes you find people diving out of the way of the car, and the car is on the road and you're on the pavement, and you're completely safe. Because they feel under threat, and they've made themselves feel that way. And all this news that we're covering is essentially geared to make you think that way, to make you an ideologue, so that you don't question who's funding Israel and who's funding Palestine, so that you don't question who's funding Nick Clegg and why, so that you don't question, how can you have democracy in a local level and democracy on an EU level, because if they make you feel under threat, if they make you dive out the way of the non-existent car, well, they've got you to dive, haven't they? And you didn't think. And they are hijacking your natural human instincts of, feeling sorry for people or feeling angry at injustices or feeling an unfairness has been done or that you could have a better lot. They're taking these perfectly healthy human instincts and they're amping up the pressure so that you constantly react to things. But you've got to be certain, and you've got to look at your news, and you've got to think about things and talk like this with people who are in good faith and not just wanting to jump down each other's throats. You've got to do that so that you can see, is the car really coming towards you, or are you actually safe? And you'll save yourself a lot of stress, and you'll find out a lot more, and you won't become an ideologue. So once again, thank you to everybody, and it's been good. And yeah.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Of course, I'm glad to be here also. While I participated tonight and listened, I kept thinking about the reasons that a master would not want to teach his student everything that he knew, especially in the case of martial arts or any kind of handed down self-defense training. And I kept drawing a blank. Fooled around with self-defense a lot of my life in various ways. Most of the time were in ways that were handed down. Most of mine goes to, believe it or not, I wasn't, to make this clear, because I was part of what I consider to be a cult is where this final word comes from. And that's Aikido. Participated in an Aikido dojo for about 3 months of my life when I was 17 years old. And I realized very quickly what was happening there. There's only one reason that the master wouldn't want to impart to the student everything that he knew. And that's if he had a secret. If he would like to retain some kind of control over the pupil. That's never the object of a good teacher. It's never the object of a good teacher. The object of a good teacher is always to create in the pupil something that surpasses the instructor, something that in every way is more beautiful, more thoughtful, more complete than the instructor, or the instructor has failed. We are being given half truths. So the idea of pulling guard and keeping your shit together and going for an arm bar and getting the fuck out of it alive is all swept under the table for some fancy, schmancy spinning back kick that only 1 in 100 professional fighters could ever pull off in a serious situation. It's all the smoke and oakum. It's all mirrors in misdirection. So I'm gonna appeal to you right now as I kick it off to Common Sense Guy. If our gurus in this modern age are giving us half truths and not filling us in, and they have some agenda, who cares what it is? Doesn't matter if it's the Illuminati and Bohemian Grove and the Trilateral Commission, or if it's labor versus, well, it doesn't matter what it is. Be your own guru. Do your own studying. And I'm not trying to sound all fight clubby, but go out and get into a fist fight. You know, maybe in a bar somewhere. And I'm not saying to go out and get in trouble, but, you know, somebody rubs you the wrong way and you know you're in that place, you know, get in a fight. Maybe you win, maybe you lose. Maybe it'll make you into a different person. Be your own guru and be good to your friends and your family members, because before you know it, folks, they'll be gone.
Thank you very much for that, Ogre. Thank you very much for everybody coming on to the panel tonight. We've all done really well. We've talked about a hell of a lot of different things. Psychology was absolutely amazing today to be able to talk about that. So thank you, crumplpoint and Ogre, for being able to talk about that quite well. Aaron, you are a very intelligent guy. Just believe in yourself a little bit more. Even if you don't know what the subject is, do what you've been doing all day. Ask the questions. Just because that you think other people are not going to be asking questions or even thinking about it, that's the way you learn. That's the way we all learned, by asking questions. This is not an attack on you or anything at all either. It's just something for the future, my friend. Join in the conversation. Even if you get the conversation wrong, somebody will correct you. Doesn't mean that they're trying to say you're stupid or anything else like that. It's just a case of learning. And that's what we were talking about earlier on with all the schools and children and not being able to go a first, second, or third or anything else like that. It's a case that people don't put their hands up anymore. They don't answer the questions. They don't ask the questions that need to be asked anymore. It's a case that a lot of people just think that they know either better or don't care to know. Because if you care to know, then that means that you want to make yourself either work harder or put yourself in a position that could put you into harm's way in your head. It's exactly what crumplpoint was saying and alluding to. That is the ideology of people nowadays. That if you try and put yourself in a position where you're not familiar with, for instance, some people won't change jobs because they're happy where they are. Now, you know they're not happy because they come home to you or speak to you in the pub day in, day out saying how much they fucking hate their job. But they're so scared about making that change to go to a new place, to learn new skills or to do new things, that they stagnate. And that's the worst thing that you can do wherever you are. If you're not happy where you are, move on. Even if it's in a relationship, even if it's a friendly relationship, even if it's a family relationship, if you're not happy, and generally you're not happy all the time, and it's for a proper reason, move on. Because the only way that you can ever be happy is by being true to you, not by listening to what the government wants to tell you to do, not listening to how you need to educate yourself. You need to learn all of the alphabet when all you want to do is learn about puffins, fucking how they migrate from place to place. Go learn about the puffins. You can do that in your own time. It doesn't matter. Get your qualifications and then go do a study on it if you want to. All I'm saying is that the opportunities are out there. Don't let the people that are around you tell you that you can't do it because they haven't got the balls to do it themselves. This stream and every stream is always the same. It's personal responsibilities, and the fact that the government is taking away personal responsibilities to entice and impregnate us with the idea of institutionalization. And that's really all I have to say on that. We did stories about the schools and the pencil cases being banned and the rucksacks being banned and things like that. And that's in our country, and that's going on in 140 schools at this moment in time. Right now, that's going on. We're not even allowed to talk about the ideas of crime, with 550 people facing deportation for raping and had sexual contact with children. Over 220 people, separate to those 550 people, are on the child sex register. 120 of them are being accused of actually forcing people to work in slavery-like conditions, modern-day slavery for children and women. Over 60 properties in Newcastle alone are part of what's going on for that. That means they had 60 properties where they could shift girls from one place to another and hold them there, and nobody was doing nothing about it until now.
My God.
The worst thing about this is the fact that the government, first of all, put £3.5 million into trying to sort this out to be able to do the actual inquiry. It's gone. They're now not an independent inquiry. They are now part of the police.
Fuck.
That's the most worrying part of that the government has now come out with a sanctuary report that is not allowed to be published nationally, and is now going into not being independent anymore, and is now going into the police to do it in the national sex operation. It is now being lost to it. There will not be another inquiry going into that. And that in itself, which I have all on my channel if you want to look at it and find it. It's all there. You can all go and read it and whatnot. These are the things that need to be talked about and need to have our own responsibility to be able to talk about it. Now, with that being said, thank you all, and I'm going to bid you farewell. I'm going to bid you adieu, and I'll speak to you all again.